Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, February 9th of 2025. I actually had a really fun week this week. One of my brothers came into town with his wife and 15-year-old daughter and spent the week with us. And so my journaling took on a whole new meaning because of the conversations that I mostly had with my brother. Now, this particular brother is 15 years younger than me, but we have always had a very close relationship. I remember getting up in the middle of the night with him when I was a teenager, and my mom used to count on us, her older kids, to help with the younger kids. And even in the middle of the night, I'd be changing diapers and preparing bottles for some of my younger siblings, which was just part of growing up in a family that size. But it has really gifted many of us with these deep connections that we carry through and have carried through in adulthood. So I don't get to spend a lot of time in the physical presence of this brother because he lives in a different state, and he spent a lot of time in the military and was overseas a lot. And anyway, we do connect via all the beautiful technology that we get to partake in. But we got to spend almost the entire week in person. He went with me on my walk. We had some great conversations over cups of tea and meals. And at the very beginning of the week, because he got here last Sunday with his family, but at the very beginning of the week, we had some interesting conversations about business because him and his wife are business owners. She owns a business. He owns a business. There's a part of their businesses that are connected. But because they're both entrepreneurs, I have a business, we have a lot in common to talk about. And we have a lot in common to talk about too when it comes to raising our consciousness and really looking at the world as frequency and energy and gratitude and everything. So at the very beginning of the week, we had this conversation about being a consumer, and just how it distracts us from these things and it lowers our consciousness. And what this conversation flowed into would, and of course this is not odd, but our phones were of course there. And so later that day, after we'd had that first initial conversation after he got there, I opened my laptop, checking emails, whatever, and I popped over to YouTube just to see if there were any comments I needed to respond to. And there in the algorithm was there was a video on consuming less. So of course we all know how that works. We know our devices are listening to us, but this actually spurred some really incredible thoughts for me this week that I'm excited to share with you. And before we move too far, I want to thank everyone for piping in with a comment and a thumbs up on last week's video. It was really, first of all, it was really fun to hear what you're saying, even if it was like, hey, I'm here, I'm watching, I'm listening. But many of you piped in with some beautiful comments and beautiful things that you see. And as you're moving through this world and your perspectives are shifting and growing and changing and expanding like mine is, it's fun to connect with you on that level. So thank you. Thank you all for playing that game. It was super fun, and it is interesting to watch the algorithms of the things that get playtime and the things that don't get playtime, which is fine. So at the very beginning of my week, I actually wrote this. This was right before my brother came. I wrote "Choose your hard" because we look at all the things that are hard, whether it be, one of my best examples is staying healthy. It might be hard to eat clean, exercise every day, say no to the alcohol and the cookies and the food that's not good for us, or that can be hard to say no to that, or it can be hard to deal with the consequences of those things affecting our health. So I think choosing our hard, this can go with everything. So that was kind of where the first of my mindset went, just because, sometimes I have trouble saying no to a brownie, and then it wreaks havoc on my digestive system, and I'm just like, ugh. So I'm like, choose your hard, choose your hard. So then I wrote this, and this was from a little video that I watched about not gathering stuff and how to like information and motivational things about decluttering. One woman in this little video said, "The harsh truth is no one wants your stuff." Okay, so think about that. That is, having had both my parents and my husband's parents pass away. My husband's parents left a large house they'd been in for 60 years, full of stuff that my husband and his siblings went through after their parents passed away, and it was a big job. And while there were a few things that wanted to be kept, many things were just donated. They were gifted. There were some few things that I think were sold, but you start to realize that all these things are just things. And when I heard that was actually really powerful. The harsh truth is no one wants your stuff. In fact, here's a story that might shock some of you. So a few years ago, I was going through a lot of stuff and sentimental stuff that I was, not willing to leave for my kids to go through. So I have two boys that are in their 40s, and one has 2 kids and one has no kids. So about 10 years ago, and I believe this was shortly after my husband and his siblings went through their parents' stuff, because his parents have been gone for about 10, 12 years. So I started going through stuff that I hadn't looked at for years, maybe even a couple of decades. And one of the things I ran across were my boys' baby books. Now, this is where I've shared this with other people over the years, and I've gotten like a jaw drop, stunning, like, how can you do that? But I asked each of my boys, and I showed it to them. Here's your baby book that I made when you were small. Do you want this? And the answer, they looked at it, and it was a little homemade book. It wasn't like a fancy store-bought book, but it had like, the little thing around their wrist when they were born, from the hospital, and it had, some pictures that I'd put in there, and it was, it's just a sweet little baby book. Both my boys said no. They didn't want it. So I snapped a few digital pictures of some of the pages that were awesome. I pulled out some of the photographs, but all the stuff that was mementos or, whatever, I just left in there, and then I threw them away. So when I tell people I threw away my boys' baby books, it's just like, oh my gosh, how can you do that? Now, this is my own personal journey through this life and my way of decluttering. And it might be shocking and stunning for other people to wrap their head around, especially if you're a mom. You have things that you treasure, momentous. You should never get rid of things that bring you joy. Like Marie Kondo wrote there's a book, I can't remember now, but I read it and it impacted me. And if there's things that bring you joy, those are the things that you should keep, right? So then I had this realization that, and I talked about this last year, but the biggest health trend of 2024 was going alcohol-free. And I believe this was spurred by many people that were talking about going alcohol-free. One of the biggest ones was Dr. Andrew Huberman, who in 2022, I believe, he released a huge a podcast that went huge, and it just went viral, about the dangers and the health detriment of consuming alcohol. And it was just a pragmatic, here are the facts. It was like a 2-hour episode. I'll put a link below it. It's very powerful. But what I loved about that is that was the number one health trend of 2024. So then, as I was looking at this kind of decluttering thing that, happened to pop up in my feed, what actually came up is that the health trend for 2025, and we're only just past a month in, is the no buy trend. They're calling it no buy, like don't buy things. And there's challenges going out there and tons of videos by influencers and it's, saying I'm going to go an entire year without buying things. And we're not talking about food or if you need a new car, or you need, electrical, but we're talking about over consuming the things that we don't need. So there is a beautiful trend, no buy trend. It's almost a minimalist trend, which I love. And then I found this quote by Eckhart Tolle. Sometimes letting go is an act of greater power than hanging on. And that showed up in one of the, I think it was one of the videos that I ended up watching about this no buy trend. And I found a ton of videos, short little videos, people talking about this trend of 2025 is reducing your consumerism. So then I had this thought process and the thought was this. It's like, okay, I am all about raising my consciousness, escaping the reincarnation trap, and remembering who I am, releasing this earthly drama, minimizing the impact of consumerism felt really, really important in the quest for a rise in consciousness. So what I did is I actually sat down the rest of this week, and every time I would journal, I wrote down some thoughts about what does consuming less and maybe jumping on this amazing no buy trend that's happening in 2025, because I think these are the good things to jump on. Like, I've always been an outlier. I don't want to do what all the crowds are doing. Now, if it turns out that something like going alcohol free or reducing your consumerism is a trend that seems to make sense to me, I'm going to jump on that and implement some of those things that not just maybe help my finances and my bottom line, but from my perspective, I have come up with some things that came through this week that were like, this facilitates a rise in my consciousness. So these are some really thought-provoking ideas I wanted to share with you. So what we need to realize is that when we consume less, it reduces the noise and it actually gives us more clarity. So here's what I wrote about that. When we have excess possessions, it creates mental clutter. So just simply having things, lots of things hanging around. Every object that's in our environment holds an energetic weight, and believe it or not, it holds subconscious demands. There are demands on us when we've got things and stuff and clutter hanging around. And I don't need to tell anybody that. And I am not trying to get on a high horse and a preacher thing here. Trust me, I still have things and cupboards and things I need to go through. But I have experienced on a very deep level what it means to simplify, consume less, and declutter. I have never been a person who's like jumped on the newest car or the newest handbag. There's no judgment on if those things bring you so much joy, that I'm okay with that. But for me, it's never been about that. So when we clear out the unnecessary, we create space, and not just physically but mentally. And what we do is we allow intuition and insight to flow in. So that to me is something that's a great jumping off place. Is we realize that this creates energetically more flow, more intuition to flow in, because we're literally creating physical space, which is amazing. So then this thought came in. When we go into a less consumerism, no buy or less buy, we go into a little bit of frugalism, minimalism, we basically break what I like to consider the illusion of a materialistic identity. I think we let the things that we have identify us. And this is on purpose. It's on purpose by the ads we get, the things that come at us, all the companies that want to try to sell us things and upgrade. And here's the biggest and best and the newest of this. And then we let these things become our identity because we can show off to our friends. We have the newest technology gadget. We have the newest, jeans that look cool because they're all ripped and that's the fashion. It becomes a materialistic identity. And then here's what I wrote about this. I believe that modern society conditions us to believe that we are what we own. When we stop consuming mindlessly, what happens is we strip away what is false about ourselves, and we come right face to face of who we truly are. If we strip away that materialistic thing that's false, we get to come face to face with who we really are. Like that is perfection right there. And it might be hard in the beginning if you're used to being identified by the things that you own. Right? Okay, so the next thing that this fits right in is this actually gives you freedom from this consumerism treadmill or this matrix. When you stop consuming on the level that you might be consuming, you gain freedom from this consumerism matrix. And here I wrote about what I wrote about that. And this is where I just said about the corporations, and they're just doing their job. Their job is to get you to buy more of their stuff. And to say I have not been caught in that would be a total falsehood. I've totally been caught in that over the years. So corporations and media, they engineer what I really think is perpetual dissatisfaction. We are never satisfied with what we have, okay? The more that we consume, the deeper we are enmeshed in this matrix of control. The more we keep consuming, we just get caught deeper and deeper in this web, this matrix. So to me, that's like something to really think about and disconnect yourself from. It takes practice. It just takes practice. And it takes a realization of who you really are and a satisfaction and a gratitude for what you have, right? So when you start to maybe try this as an experiment, maybe you could jump aboard the trend of the no-buy trend. Basically what it does, it can strengthen your energetic field. And by that I mean this. Everything we own carries a vibrational signature. My journal. This contains a vibrational signature. When we have a cluttered environment, it creates energetic congestion and it weakens our aura. Okay? When we release the excess and let our energetic field expand, it makes it easier to access higher states of consciousness. And I can personally attest to this. It also gives us spiritual downloads and it gives us a sense of inner peace. I think that when we get something, and I wrote this here later, but we have to then maintain it. We have to think about it. We have to, especially if it's something valuable. Is someone going to steal it? Is someone going to hurt it? Is someone going to dent it? We then have layers of things that are taking up the space that we could give to raising our consciousness and simply having inner peace. How about inner peace? Just inner peace. Right? Okay, so then the next thing I wrote here, and I really love this, is that when we consume less, it gives us mastery over the illusion that we lack something. There's an illusion that we live in lack. That's why we've got to consume something, because it's like we don't have enough. And trust me, I've done a lot. There's a marketing group I belonged to about 10 years ago. It was one of my favorite groups of people, because it did feel like it was a group of people that wanted to do their marketing in a conscious way. And of course there were the tips and how to think, but there are companies and there are divisions of companies that are dedicated to market to you. And I believe a lot of that is an illusion. It's an illusion that we are lacking something. We're lacking that designer dress or that designer bag or that fur coat or that bigger house or the nicer car or the newest model of the iPhone, or there's an illusion of lack. And when we realize it's an illusion, it makes it much easier to step out of, because we realize it's not real. So here's what I wrote about that. There's a compulsion to buy, and this is rooted in a deep-seated belief that something is missing. There's something missing, something we're lacking. When we practice non-consumption, we are confronting this illusion head-on. We confront it directly, and we begin to realize that we have everything we need. And, my thought, I always look at people who are dressed with the newest fashions, and maybe they're just really well put together and they can pull off some of these beautiful designer great outfits. And I think that's really, really, really great. Partly too because that's their style. You know, I have a couple of siblings that they have a style I could never pull off too, because it's not my personality. You know, I'm a mountain girl. I'm a fitness girl. I'm an herb girl. You know, I wear no jewelry. Like, I don't wear jewelry. I have these earrings that are, you know, what I like. You know, when people comment because they sparkle in a certain light, I like to say I got them from Target, which is where I got it. So, and I'm really not trying to brag about this. I'm just trying to say that when you realize that you have everything you need, and it doesn't matter what other people think of you, it's really one of the most beautiful things that I think I've come to realize as a person who's getting older, and I gain more wisdom, right? So that is basically the illusion that we've been given that something's lacking. Okay. So then I wrote that when we are able to do this, we literally reclaim our time and our life force. We have a life force that gets so distracted by the stuff. So here's what I wrote about that. Every purchase we make demands energy. Every purchase. There's this: researching, maintaining, cleaning, organizing, and upgrading. You know, and it's not that some of these things might not be necessary. You might need to get a new computer. You might need to get a new printer. You might need to get a new couch because the couch you had is old, worn out, stained, maybe, or whatever. So there is something that needs to happen for you to make these decisions and purchases. But I think for the most part, when we're just simply trying to keep up with other people or fulfill a need that we might not really need, that look at all of this, what happens. Our life force, our time, it all goes into that. So when we stop buying things we don't need, we reclaim our time and our mental bandwidth. We get to reclaim all of that. So then when you go into a place of less consumerism, basically what happens is we get to reset our nervous system and the hyperstimulation that comes with that. You know, when we're caught in that loop, that's just hyperstimulation. And here's what I wrote about that. We live in this world of overstimulation, right? So there's ads, trends, sales, social media algorithms, all these things, and they're all designed to keep us hooked. And this is something I have to pay close attention to, not because I'm going to consume the physical stuff, because I am a consumer of information and what's going on. I can watch all the stuff, and I can look at the political stuff. I can look at the train wrecks and the plane wrecks and the horrible things that are happening. And while I do think it's good to stay up on these things, it's also really interesting to realize that those are on purpose to keep your most valuable commodity, which is your attention, even more valuable than your time or than your money. Is if they can get your attention, you are now not adding to the collective rise in consciousness and all the action you could be taking with creativity and all that stuff. So all these things are designed to keep us hooked. When we step back from the cycle of consumption, our nervous system gets a chance to recalibrate. You might not realize that. And it goes into a natural state of calm, making it easier to enter meditative or intuitive states. So if we want to have a goal to meditate every day and raise our consciousness, when we step away from this cycle of overstimulation, we are able to get into those states of clarity and intuition easier. So another thing that this will provide is it unlocks the power of presence. You know, I've been talking about be here now, let's enjoy this moment. And there are many people who talk about this. You know, we are in this matrix, we're in this simulation, we're in this life, this lifetime, however it is that you look at this. And if we spend our time with all the distractions and all the consumption and then trying to herd our stuff around, we're missing the point of being here and being present. So here's what I wrote about that. When we are constantly acquiring more, our mind is fixated on the next thing. the present moment becomes a stepping stone rather than a destination. The present moment becomes a stepping stone instead of realizing that this present moment is our destination. This is what we're looking for, is being here now. There is something to this. When we simplify our space and the consumption habits, they will allow us to fully inhibit the now. The only place where I believe true transformation resides is in the now, when we can embrace the now. And if we're not surrounded by clutter and all of our stuff, one of the things I tell you has been empowering for me was the the very hard thing when parents do pass away and they leave behind things, and you think, well, if hopefully you're at a place where it's like, well, I'm not going to fight over that. My parents did not leave. My dad passed away a long time ago. He had a piece of property that got sold, and we all got a small, because there's so many of us, we all got a small chunk of money. Of course, in hindsight, there's been wish that we'd kept that property, but that is like a whole big story. And then my mom passed away literally like 16, 17 years after my dad. And she did not leave much either. And in a way, that was a really big gift. Her physical possessions were very, very small at that point. And then, of course, there was the contrast with my husband's parents, who had some assets that were, included a house, a whole bunch of stuff, some valuable furniture, some valuable paintings, some money in a bank account. There was some jewelry, there was some stuff, and you watch these things, and from my perspective, and I will tell you, I've never seen three siblings with more grace and more love for each other go through their parents' belongings. I haven't witnessed a lot of that, but I've heard stories, and I've never witnessed something as beautiful as what my husband and his siblings did when their parents passed, and they had to go through all of their things and what they had left behind. So it's just, but it was a lot. There was a lot of stuff that needed to be handled, and some of them were sentimental and hard to figure out. So that's a whole nother story. Okay, so then toward the end of the week, as I was thinking about these all week long, it was a really kind of a cool journaling week, because I had all this time with my brother and his family. We enjoyed good food together. I didn't have as much alone time for my journaling, but it was actually just such a beautiful connection week, and we talked about some of these things. But one of the things that really kind of came in was that when we can really look at this consumerism trap, and we can get a grip on it, and we can release things. It helps to dissolve the reincarnation trap. And I wrote that down. I thought, oh, okay, from my perspective and all the things that I've been studying, what my dreams and my hopes are for when I leave this, this physical life in this body, I don't want to be trapped again in the reincarnation wheel. So then I wrote this: material attachments can tether our soul to this plane of existence, right? So think about that. If we have, $50 million and we have 10 houses or 5 houses or 3 houses in different states and exotic locales, and maybe we have enough money to have 10 of our favorite cars, old model cars, fancy new cars, whatever. Okay, so material attachments can tether our soul to this plane of existence. Now, I'm not saying that this happens to everybody, and I'm also saying it even happens at all. Maybe people that have this type of material wealth are highly evolved on a conscious level. This is no diss on anyone who lives their life with full abundance and has high consciousness. because I believe that is absolutely, I'm sure there are plenty of people like that. But I do believe that that material attachments has the potential to tether our soul to this plane of existence. Many spiritual traditions will teach that unresolved desires and attachments can pull us back into the cycle of reincarnation. Because it's like, oh, I want to come back and I'm going to leave myself clues and especially if someone believes in reincarnation, it's like, I'm going to build up as much material wealth I can so it can be better in the next life, right? The more we release the need for external validation through possessions, the more we release and liberate ourselves from the karmic cycle, the karmic loop. I thought that was a really fun thought, is to really think about when we minimalize, it can help release us from that reincarnation trap. It's just one level. So also what I have found personally is that this actually helps us strengthen our intuition and our ability to have inner guidance, because we're not distracted. So here's what I wrote about that. When we rely less on external distractions and excess, our inner world sharpens. And I have found this to be so true. This is so powerful. Our intuition has the ability to become louder, and our dream world becomes more vivid. And our ability to discern truth from illusion has the ability to intensify. So it sharpens our ability to walk through this life more intuitively, with more gut responses, more inner guidance. And until you experience this, it can be hard to wrap your head around, because we are in a material world. And if like Madonna's song, material world, material girl. When I said that phrase, I'm like, okay, that was popular in the 80s. And I loved MTV and all those videos as much as anybody. But we live in a material world, and we do need the material. We need a home to sleep in, a warm place to be. We need clothes to cover us. We need material things to carry us through this existence. And I think this whole thought process actually makes me really smile, because a few years ago I did a little video on the power of decluttering, and I think it was based on Marie Kondo's book. I just read it, the life-changing power of tidying up. I think that was the name of that book, and this was probably 8 or 10 years ago. I did a little video on it, and it lives still somewhere on this YouTube channel, and I actually had a couple of comments way back then, and I remember them because they so surprised me. But I actually had someone say, how dare you get on and lecture us about decluttering? What right do you have to, make yourself look so superior? And I was just like, what? what? No, it was like, that is not my point. I think my really truly my goal for this intention of a message is to help us realize that the material world and the need to keep buying things can really hold back our rising consciousness. And I've experienced this myself over all these years. In fact, here's something really interesting, and this happened along my journey of decluttering, because I have followed, there's a couple of guys, they're called the Minimalists. They've done a couple of documentaries, they've got a podcast. I don't listen all the time. In fact, I haven't listened for a while. But they had a huge impact on my journey of minimalizing my stuff, my physical stuff, so it could lighten my consciousness load. And I remember that I went through this big phase. It was probably a couple of years. So this is always a journey for all of us, where what I would do is I would go through my closet, I would go through my drawers, I would go through the stuff that I had tucked away that was sentimental to me, that I thought was sentimental. And I would go through and I'd fill up bags of stuff, and I would take it to a charity and I would donate it. And I would take bags and bags. And there's a place here, they're all over Utah. They're donation centers that are owned by the Mormon Church, and they're called Deseret Industries, or DI. And if you know anything about the Mormon Church, and you can go and you can donate. You can donate furniture and clothes and books and all the things that you don't want to just toss in the garbage, but you want someone to be able to utilize. So what they do is there's a donate at the back of this big center, and they're all over Utah, and then in the front is the store. So after they get donated, they have workers in there that go through everything, they clean things up, they might do minor repairs, or they even have a big bin out in the back where they end up throwing things away too. But in the front of the store, it's like a thrift store. And you get a really, really good deal on secondhand clothes and dishes and books and paintings. And what I found myself doing for literally a couple of years is I would drop off a load of stuff, and then I would go park in the front and go see what was there and see if there was a keepsake or something. And I've actually found myself saying, wow, look at this. Looks like this was something super special. How could someone get rid of this memento? And I have since then, this was probably a good 10 years ago, when I went through this couple year thing. And I realized that I would drop off stuff, and then I would go around to the front of the store, find a couple of bargains and thrift things that were just like, oh, this is so awesome. And I would continue to clutter up my house until I realized what I was doing. And I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but you have to be really strategic when you get rid of things, that you're not jumping into the same consumerism loop, right? Okay, so it strengthens your intuition and inner guidance. And so here's what I wrote about that. Oh, I actually already went through that. So the next one is that it raises our vibration for what my goal is ascension. I want to ascend my worldly things. I want to ascend my consciousness so that when my physical body dies, that I am in the place where my divine spark of pure love and consciousness can reside in the fabric of everything that is. And I believe that while I'm here working on this, that I can get that deeper part of me tuned in and tapped and turned on, so that I can reach the levels of awareness and awakening that I want to reach, right? So everything we own raises or lowers our vibrational frequency. Everything we own, everything, right? When we consciously curate our environment to be intentionally and energetically light, we naturally raise our vibration, okay? Aligning ourselves with higher dimensions of consciousness. Like if you look at the shelf behind me, so I've got some crystals on the floor, some amethyst, I've got a couple little things of love. The painting in the middle is one of my acrylic pours. And then if you were to see in this room, it's very bare. It's almost nothing. I have some quilting frames because when I grew up, I learned how to quilt, and I still can whip up a quilt for a person I love in an afternoon. And that's something I still find so much joy in. And in these cupboards back here, there's some fabric that if I need to make a baby quilt last minute, I get invited to a baby shower, then I can just pull out some fabric, I can whip up a quilt, and then also there's some books in here, and there's some blank paper, but everything is minimal and organized. And this is again not to say, oh, look at me, how great I am. No, this is just, I can tell you firsthand that this actually raises my vibration. This is a lot of this space. There's a window all over here, windows, but over there, there's a beautiful big, kind of like a love seat, but it's a single seat that's really overstuffed. I actually bought that with money I got from my dad when he passed away. So that is 27 years old. And so it has special meaning for me. It's in perfect condition. And that is where I go, and I will spend a lot of time meditating. This space is so clean and so minimal that it literally energetically frees me to have and experience higher states of consciousness and ascension. And it's exactly what I'm after, okay? So then I believe that this also can free us from mind programming, okay? And here's what I wrote about that. Marketing operates by instilling subconscious cravings and fears into us. This is what marketing does on purpose. It's on purpose. Okay? When we detach from consumer culture, we take back control of our own mind, making it harder for external forces to manipulate our thoughts and behaviors. Okay, simple as that. The next thing I wrote is that this can cultivate deep gratitude and abundance. When we stop chasing more, we start appreciating what is. The less I consume, the more I realize how abundant my life really is. Gratitude is high frequency. It's a high frequency state. It naturally attracts even more aligned opportunities and experiences. And that's what I'm after. I'm after more opportunities, and I'm after more experiences than I am after collecting stuff. It also strengthens our connection with nature. Okay, and here's what I wrote about that. Modern consumerism thrives on the artificial. It's artificiality. Okay, when I reduce consumption, I naturally gravitate toward nature. Now I gravitate that way anyway, and maybe it's vice versa. Because I gravitate toward nature, it naturally just reduces my desire for consumerism. Even though I've had my share. And I've had my share of emotional consumerism, where I'm consuming something, I'm shopping for something because it's fulfilling an emotional need for me at that moment. So there's a recognition of that, right? When we naturally gravitate toward nature, this is where real healing, grounding, and expansion occur. And the earth operates on a frequency that dissolves illusions and awakens what I like to consider dormant wisdom that resides within all of us. There's a dormant wisdom there that nature releases. It's really amazing. This also helps us to rewrite our soul's script. Okay, here's what I wrote. Every choice that we make programs our reality. If we continue consuming like the collective does, we remain in a default timeline. I've been talking about this for the last 5 years. I believe there is a timeline split happening. And the default timeline is consumerism. Okay? We default to that because that's where mass consciousness lives, is in that consumerism mindset. When we consciously choose a path of simplicity and intention, we can rewrite our soul's trajectory toward greater expansion, sovereignty, and ultimately enlightenment. Okay, so then to wrap this up, here's a few thoughts on this no buy movement. Okay, I love it. I believe that this is a portal to liberation mentally, energetically, and spiritually. When we stop feeding this illusion, we reclaim our power to create our own reality. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and fulfillment is a carefully designed illusion? Ask yourself that question. Journal on. That's a great thing to journal on this week. In fact, these are some things that I'm going to continue journaling on because this week has been such an amazing week of journaling to take my idea of too much consumerism even down to a more basic level. It's like what happened in 2024. Now, I actually stopped drinking alcohol right before Thanksgiving of 2023. So all of 2024, when I heard about alcohol-free being the biggest health trend, I was like, nice, that's awesome. So now at the beginning of 2025, where I hear that the no buy and lowering consumerism is a trend, I'm like, yes, because this means that the collective is moving into a direction that we all want, right? So here is a hard truth. What we are drowning in are things we don't need. We're chasing desires that aren't even ours, right? Every object in our house, every impulse buy, every must-have item, it all comes with a price far greater than dollars. It costs you peace, focus, and freedom. Whoa. That's a hard truth. Okay, I want to say this again because this to me is super important. We are drowning in things we don't need. We are chasing desires that aren't even ours. Every object in our home, every impulse buy, every must buy, must have item, it all comes with a price far greater than dollars. It costs us our peace, our focus, and our freedom. So why do we keep holding on to these things? We hold on to these things because we think they define us. We believe the right clothes will make us more desirable, the latest gadget will make life easier, or we think that a bigger house means we've made it, and here we are. It's going to be funner to have a big house. But does it? Does this really, do these things really create what we're hoping they create? Or have we just built bigger cages and filled them with distractions? Ooh. Whoa, right? And then I'll end with this. Every object in our space demands a fraction of our attention. Every single object in our space demands a fraction of our attention, okay? The messy drawer, the pile of clothes that you might wear one day, the shelf of impulse purchases, they whisper to us every day, creating low levels of stress that we don't even realize are there. Our mind is so cluttered because the environment is cluttered. So, I would definitely like to know what you think about this. Did I come across as a preachy person in this video and with this thought process? I will tell you my intention for this is one of just pure love, because this is a very empowering idea of releasing ourselves from the consumerism that's not even ours. And we might think it's ours. We're trying to keep up with somebody, or someone's telling us that this is what we need. And when we detach from that, these big epiphanies happen, and these big awarenesses are able to explode. And I believe these are the things that help us have a raise in consciousness. And it is freaking beautiful. So again, my intention was not to trigger you that look at me, this is what I've done. My intention really is to crack open and inspire something that might motivate you to lighten your physical load in all areas of your life, because there is a denseness to the frequency of the things that we own. And if there are things that bring you joy, if it's a closet full of clothes that you love and adore and you wear, yes, by all means, don't get rid of the baby books from your kids if they bring you joy. I am like sharing my experience of things that I've released because they don't bring me joy. And that, I've had some sisters that responded to that with their jaw on the floor, because but that's the things that bring them joy. So this is a non-judgment zone of what each of us takes with us through this life that brings us joy. So I would really, truly love to see what you think about this. If you piped in last week, pipe in again this week. I would love that. But thanks for tuning in today, guys. I hope you have a brilliant, beautiful second full week in February of 2025. I love you tons, and we will see you next time.